blackout in NYC. A stalled subway. A blue-eyed CEO spots a brass token in a boy's hand, engraved, "Find your way back to me, E." His world tilts. The lights flickered once, then died. A low hum of the train's engines faded into the kind of silence that makes people hold their breath. The tunnel swallowed sound. Emergency lights blinked to life, pale red circles pulsing against steel and shadow. Someone cried out, a baby's wail echoing down the car. Landon Hayes steadied himself, one gloved hand braced against the door. Even in the dim glow, the edges of his presence seemed defined. Dark hair neatly styled, collar crisp. Italian suit immaculate even underground. The prestigious watch at his wrist caught the weak light. He surveyed the frightened faces around him and spoke in a calm, low voice that carried authority without sharpness. "Everyone, take a breath. We're safe for now," he said. "No one move until we get instructions from transit control." People responded to tone more than words, and Landon's tone was composed, steady, as if he had planned for this blackout himself. In a way, he had. Archer Site, his company, specialized in emergency logistics and AI network control. But tonight, he wasn't the executive in a Manhattan boardroom. He was one of 100 people trapped beneath the city. A small beam of light flicked through the dark, steady, then pulsing. Landon turned. Near the back of the car, a boy about 9 years old knelt beside a stroller, his phone flashlight blinking in a calm, rhythmic pattern. The beam wasn't random. It was measured. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, pause. He was fanning air toward a toddler whose breath hitched in panic. Landon crouched beside him. "Hey," he said softly. "You're doing great. Keep your light steady like that." The boy glanced up. His face was smudged but alert, his brown eyes reflecting both fear and focus. "She's scared," he whispered. "It's hard to breathe." "We'll get more air moving soon," Landon said. He reached for the vent above them, guiding airflow with his jacket to direct the faint draft toward the stroller. "What's your name?" "Micah." "Micah," Landon repeated, as if anchoring it. "You're helping more than you know." As he shifted, something glinted at Micah's chest, a brass subway token hanging from a thin cord. It swung once, catching the faint red light. Landon recognized the design instantly. An older MTA series, retired over a decade ago. But it wasn't the token that stopped him, it was the engraving on its face. The boy's fingers brushed it nervously, and the token flipped over. In tiny, worn letters were the words, "Find your way back to me. E." Landon froze. The car seemed to tilt, even though it hadn't moved. His pulse hammered once, deep in his chest. That line, that exact engraving, he had etched it himself, years ago, for someone he thought he'd lost forever. The power surged briefly, then died again, jolting the car. People gasped. Landon blinked hard, steadying himself, the name pressing against the back of his mind like a heartbeat. Maya. Somewhere in this tunnel, fate had circled back. Landon steadied himself as the metal wheels groaned to a halt. The car rocked slightly, and a low murmur of anxiety swept through the passengers. The air was already growing warmer, thicker. Somewhere down the tunnel, an MTA worker's voice shouted through static, "Stay calm. We're working on restoring power." He turned back toward the boy. Micah had resumed his rhythmic tapping. Light flashing, pause, light flashing. It wasn't random. It reminded Landon of coded signals, like the kind rescue workers used during the hurricane drills Archer Site had once funded in coastal cities. "You've done this before?" Landon asked quietly. Micah shrugged, small shoulders lifting beneath a too-thin hoodie. "Mom says when something breaks, you help by staying calm. And breathing slow." Landon nodded, impressed. "She sounds smart." "She's a nurse," Micah said. "She was supposed to be on the platform waiting for me after my music class, but the train stopped. Music class, the subway token, the calm voice. Landon's mind turned gears he hadn't moved in years. He glanced at the child's face, clear, round features, steady eyes, and something about that composure, that careful way of helping others before himself, felt familiar in a way that made his chest ache. "'Kay," Landon said, rising and speaking loud enough for the nearest passengers. "Everyone, we need to conserve oxygen. No shouting, no running. We'll help the kids and elders first when the doors open." People quieted. The authoritative cadence in his voice commanded instinctive trust. He didn't announce who he was. He didn't have to. His confidence filled the space like oxygen itself. He pulled his phone from his pocket. No signal, but the internal emergency app connected to a low-frequency channel. Archer Site's private satellite grid had redundancies for this exact type of event. "Archer Site, activate emergency response protocol A12, underground," he said under his breath. A small vibration confirmed his voice authentication. Within seconds, his phone displayed a schematic. Beacon nodes available. Deploy via drone route in 11 minutes. He exhaled quietly. Help would come. Turning back to Micah, he knelt again. "We're going to make it out. You see those vents up there?" Micah nodded. "When the beacons arrive, they'll push fresh air through. You'll help me make sure everyone near you stays calm, okay?" Micah's eyes widened. "You trust me to do that?" Landon smiled faintly. "I do." For the next 10 minutes, the subway car became a quiet rhythm of whispered reassurance and soft breathing. Micah checked on the toddler, offered his water bottle to an elderly woman, then looked up at Landon with small, serious eyes. "You sound like my mom," he said. Landon froze mid-motion. "Do I?" "She talks like that when people are scared," Micah said softly. "Like everything will be okay, even if it's not yet." Before Landon could answer, the emergency doors clanked and a thin strip of light appeared. A transit worker shouted that the first car could begin evacuating toward the next platform. Landon looked down the line, flickering flashlights, shadows moving. He reached out to help Micah stand. The boy's brass token swung again, glinting under the pulsing red light. Landon's gaze followed it like a compass needle drawn north. The engraved words caught once more, and behind them, a memory flickered to life. Snow, a gala balcony, and a woman's laughter fading into the night. The door screeched open wider, flooding the car with a hint of cold air. Landon's heart thudded once, sharp and deliberate. He was about to find out if fate truly remembered. The narrow service lights along the tunnel ceiling flickered to life, streaking weak yellow across the damp concrete walls. A crew in reflective vests guided passengers one car at a time toward the platform. The air smelled of ozone and fear, sharp and metallic. Landon moved with quiet authority, one hand lightly resting on Micah's shoulder. "Stay close," he said. "Hold the rail when we walk." The boy nodded, his small fingers gripping the steel edge of the seat before stepping onto the track bed. His brass token swung, brushing against his chin, catching light as though it remembered the sun. Halfway down the car, a woman's voice called faintly through the din, tight with panic but strong underneath. "Micah! Micah, baby!" Micah's head shot up. "Mom!" he cried, trying to run, but Landon caught his arm gently. "Easy," he said. "Follow me. The ground's uneven." They climbed up to the platform, the boy's sneakers scraping against the concrete lip. The woman waiting there looked like she'd been carved out of worry. Scrubs half covered by a winter coat, hair damp from melted snow, hands trembling. She froze when she saw Micah safe, then bolted forward and wrapped him in a fierce embrace. "I told you I'd be okay," Micah mumbled into her shoulder. Landon stood a few feet away, giving them space. Then the woman looked up, eyes meeting his, and the noise of the tunnel seemed to fade into silence. Her breath caught, her face drained of color. "Landon?" He didn't speak for a full beat, just stared. The years compressed, every sleepless night, every unanswered message, every what-if, suddenly real in front of him. "Maya," he said quietly, Her name felt unfamiliar and intimate all at once. She straightened, still holding Micah. What are you doing here?" "I was in the car with him," Landon said. His voice stayed low, steady. "He was helping others. I didn't know, but he did know, didn't he?" Somewhere deep down, the moment he saw the token, Maya's eyes flicked to it, still hanging around Micah's neck. Her lips parted slightly, disbelief breaking into something raw. "Where did you get that?" Micah looked between them, confused. "It's mine. Mom said Dad gave it to her when they first met. Before everything." The token swayed once, suspended between past and present. Landon reached out, hesitated, then let his hand fall. "I remember engraving it," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "After that night at the gala. You disappeared, Maya. I thought you wanted to." Her jaw tightened. "I tried to reach you, Landon. I wrote. I called. Every message came back, 'Do not contact.' I thought you made it clear." He frowned, confusion knitting his brow. "That's not possible. I never—" Before he could finish, another transit worker shouted orders to move passengers toward an emergency exit. Maya pulled Micah close, her nurse's instinct reasserting itself. "We'll talk later," she said, voice trembling but composed. "Get to safety first." Landon nodded, falling into step behind them as they followed the others through the dim corridor. But his mind burned with questions. Who had intercepted her messages? Why would anyone do that? And why, after all these years, did destiny choose a blackout to bring them face to face again? Behind them, the brass token gleamed faintly in the emergency light, its inscription clear: "Find your way back to me." It seemed the city had finally obeyed. They emerged from the tunnel into a narrow service corridor that smelled faintly of diesel and wet concrete. Rescue crews guided passengers toward an emergency staircase, their flashlights cutting through steam and echo. The storm outside must have pushed sleet through the ventilation shafts. Cold drops clung to the ceiling, falling in slow rhythm. Landon followed behind Maya and Micah, his mind moving faster than his steps. 8 years, he thought. 8 years since that gala, since the engraved token, the letter he never received, the silence he assumed was rejection. He had buried that ache beneath work, under layers of code, leadership, and precision. But here she was. When they reached the service hallway leading to a temporary triage area, Maya turned. Her face was pale, eyes sharp with restrained emotion. She gestured toward an EMT. "He's fine," she said quickly, motioning to Micah. "Minor exposure, just shaken." The EMT nodded, handing Micah a foil blanket before moving on. The boy sat on a bench nearby, close enough to hear, but pretending not to. Landon recognized the instinct. Children often absorbed more than they admitted. Maya crossed her arms, grounding herself before speaking. "You said you never told me to stop contacting you." "I didn't," Landon said evenly. "I would never have ignored you. I thought you wanted distance." She laughed softly, bitterly. "I wanted answers. I was pregnant, Landon. I needed to know what to do, but every time I reached out, I got an email from your assistant saying you'd moved on and any further messages would be considered harassment. I believed it." Landon's stomach dropped. He took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes. "My assistant at the time was handling press leaks after the IPO. She had full access to my correspondence, but I never asked her to respond to anything personal." Maya shook her head. "Then someone made sure we never spoke again." Silence lingered. The hum of generators filled it. Landon's tone hardened slightly, not angry, but methodical. "I'll find out who blocked it. I can request archived server logs, legacy domains too." She gave a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. Still the strategist, always fixing broken systems. "Some things deserve to be fixed," he said quietly, "especially if they broke because of me." She looked down, exhaling through her nose. "I don't want apologies, Landon. I just wanted Micah to have a normal life. He's a good kid." "I know," Landon replied. "I saw it the second I met him." Maya hesitated, then asked, What did he say to you down there? That you taught him to stay calm, Landon said, smiling faintly. That when something breaks, you breathe slow. Maya blinked hard, emotion catching her off guard. She turned away for a second, pretending to check on Micah. When she faced him again, her voice softened. He's my whole world. I don't want this to turn into a story or a scandal. Please, if the press finds out— They won't, Landon said firmly. I'll make sure of it. Before she could respond, his phone vibrated. A secure Archer site alert. He opened it and scanned the report. Underground response complete. Power grid stabilizing. Airflow restored. Network beacons deployed successfully. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and met her eyes. The system's stable now, but we're not done. I'll get the truth about what happened between us. No lawyers, no PR, just evidence. Maya studied him for a long moment, torn between skepticism and the faint, dangerous hope she had buried years ago. Then prove it, she said quietly. He nodded once, the old precision returning to his expression. I will. Behind them, Micah's small voice broke the tension. Mom, can we go home now? Maya reached for his hand. Soon, baby. As they turned to leave, Landon looked at the brass token glinting beneath the fluorescent light. He had once engraved it as a promise to find her again. Tonight, fate had engraved it back into his life. Outside, sleet lashed the city in fine silver lines. The blackout still rolled across half of Manhattan, painting the skyline in eerie silence. Inside the emergency shelter at the station, portable lanterns threw long shadows over rows of blankets and huddled families. Maya was kneeling beside Micah, wrapping a fresh thermal wrap around his shoulders. Landon stood by the entryway, coat draped over one arm, phone pressed to his ear. I need an internal forensic trace, he said calmly. Legacy inboxes, personal and assistant-level access. Filter for flagged messages from Maya Brooks, 8 to 9 years back. Use offline archives if necessary. The voice on the other end hesitated. Sir, that's pre-acquisition data. It'll take clearance. You have it, Landon said. Mark it private and timestamp it under emergency audit. No external network replication. He hung up and slipped the phone into his pocket. The soft hum of the generators made the space feel smaller. Across the room, Micah was showing another child his brass token, explaining that it was older than both of them. Maya smiled faintly, then caught Landon's gaze. He crossed over, slow enough not to startle her. The system will tell us everything, he said quietly. Who blocked you, who rerouted the messages, and when. Maya looked up, exhaustion shading her expression. You sound so sure. I build systems that can't lie, Landon replied. At least, not for long. Micah ran up, tugging at his mother's sleeve. Mom, can I show him the old engraving? She hesitated, then nodded. Just be careful, sweetheart. Micah handed the token to Landon, who held it between his gloved fingers. The words were still faintly visible under the scratches. Find your way back to me, E. He ran his thumb over the letters, memory returning like a slow flood. The night air outside the gala, snow falling through golden light, Maya's laugh, and his hand closing around the token before pressing it into hers. So, you'd never forget your way back, he had said then, half joking. She'd answered, only if you promise to find me if I do. Landon blinked away the image. You kept it all this time. Maya's voice was soft but firm. Micah found it in an old jewelry box when he was 5. He wouldn't let me sell it when things got bad. Said it was lucky. It was, Landon murmured. Before Maya could respond, his phone buzzed again. He stepped aside and answered. Go ahead. Sir, we have results, his security lead said. The assistant, Natalie Voss, flagged the correspondence as a PR risk. She rerouted it to an inactive domain and sent automated do not contact replies. She also used your signature key. Landon exhaled slowly. Preserve everything. Chain of custody, full metadata, no leaks. Yes, sir. He ended the call and looked back at Maya. "It wasn't you. It wasn't me. Someone made sure we stayed strangers." She folded her arms, bracing against a tremor that wasn't entirely from the cold. "And you'll just fix that? Like it's another system glitch?" "No," Landon said quietly. "This isn't about control. It's about truth. You deserve that much." Maya studied him, her expression unreadable. "I don't even know if I can trust what's real anymore." "Then start with this," he said, handing her the phone. On the screen glowed an encrypted log. Headers, timestamps, and IPs. Proof, not promises. Micah looked between them, sensing the gravity without understanding it fully. "Is everything okay?" Maya smiled, thin but sincere. "It's getting there, baby." Landon pocketed the phone, voice steady. "When the power comes back, I'll make sure every block, every filtered word, every lie is unmasked." He glanced at the boy, then at her. "We repair with truth, Maya. Nothing else lasts." Outside, a faint hum signaled the grid rebooting. Lights flickered through the glass above, scattering across wet tiles like tiny constellations finding their power again. The lights surged, then steadied. Electricity hummed back through the city like breath returning after a long hold. Crowds at the station clapped instinctively, an exhausted, relieved sound. But Maya stayed still, hands wrapped around a cup of instant coffee. Watching Landon as if seeing a ghost she wasn't sure she wanted back. He stood a few feet away, jacket off, sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms, tie loosened. The professional veneer had softened. Beneath it was the same man who once waited for her in the snow outside Lincoln Center with 2 coffees and a promise that life wouldn't pull them apart. It had. Landon's phone chimed, a notification from his compliance team. He opened the message silently, then looked up at her. "The investigation's complete," he said. She blinked, unsure whether to brace or hope. "That fast?" "I had archived nodes running redundantly from that era," he explained. "Every access was time-stamped and mirrored. I know who sent the fake replies, when, and from which device." She exhaled, half in disbelief. "You make it sound so simple." "It isn't," he said softly. "But it's clear." He motioned toward a quiet side hallway where a volunteer had left a folding table and 2 chairs. Maya followed after glancing at Micah, now drawing patterns in the condensation on a window, his brass token looped around his wrist. They sat. The light flickered over them, gentle and uneven. "It was Natalie," Landon began. "She rerouted every message from your address into an offline vault, used my private signing key to send rejections. She even flagged your name on social media watch lists to make sure my assistants never reintroduced you into any of my public schedules." Maya's hand tightened around her cup. "Why?" "She was negotiating for an executive partnership back then," Landon said quietly. "Public image mattered more than truth." "You didn't fit the narrative." Maya gave a bitter smile. The nurse from Queens wasn't good optics for the man rebuilding Manhattan's AI core. He looked at her directly. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Optics never mattered." For the first time her eyes softened, though uncertainty still lingered there. "Then why didn't you look for me?" "I did," he admitted. 3 years later, but the trail was gone. Your number deactivated. No forwarding address. Every search led nowhere. I assumed you didn't want to be found." She looked down. "I was raising a child, working nights, and every letter came back marked as harassment." Landon's expression broke, grief and fury mixing beneath the calm. "I should have questioned it. I should have—" "Stop," she said gently. "We both did what we could with what we knew." The words hung between them, fragile but grounding. He nodded once, quietly. "I'll have the evidence sealed, notarized, and delivered to you. No press, no lawyers, just a record of what was stolen from us." "Why?" she asked, voice trembling. "What do you want from this?" Landon hesitated, his gaze drifting to Micah, who was pressing his palm against the cold glass, counting raindrops. "Nothing," he said finally. Just a chance to do right by both of you, if you'll let me." Maya looked at him, her breath catching, caught between disbelief and something she didn't dare name. "You can't just walk back into his life," she said softly. "Or mine." "I won't," Landon said. "Not without consent. I'll earn it." She studied him for a long moment, searching for the arrogance she remembered from headlines, the ego she expected from a CEO who could make an entire city move with one command. But all she found was exhaustion and sincerity. Micah turned from the window, smiling when he saw Landon looking his way. "They said the trains will run tomorrow," he said. "Can we ride again?" Landon smiled faintly. "Maybe, but next time we'll make sure the lights stay on." Maya glanced between them, her throat tightening. And for the first time in 8 years, hope, small, cautious, and stubborn, found its way back into the room. Rain streaked the glass as dawn began to push its faint light through the city. Outside, generators still hummed, powering parts of Midtown like a fragile heartbeat. Inside Archer Site headquarters, the conference room glowed with cold blue light. Monitors lined the walls, graphs tracing power restoration curves across New York's grid. Landon stood at the head of the table, his reflection visible in the dark window beyond. The board members were half awake, faces drawn from overnight crisis management. His CFO, Grant, adjusted his tie impatiently. "Landon, the media's already reporting that you lent beacon nodes to transit for free. Do you realize how much margin exposure that is?" "I do," Landon said evenly. He had traded his suit jacket for a charcoal sweater, but his posture radiated the same precision. "What we did kept people alive. That's not margin exposure, it's proof of relevance." Grant leaned forward. "The stock will dip if investors think you're turning Archer's site into a charity." Landon met his gaze without blinking. "If protecting citizens during a blackout hurts our valuation, then our valuation was built on the wrong foundation." Murmurs rippled through the room. Another executive, a woman from operations, cleared her throat. "Sir, there's also the matter of your personal involvement. Photos circulated last night. You were seen leading evacuation protocols in the tunnel. People are connecting that to the warm pod technology demo." "Good," Landon said. "Let them. We're pivoting our rollout." Grant frowned. "To what?" "Station warm pods," Landon replied. "Micro-grid shelters equipped with beacon mesh. They'll activate during outages to provide heat, air circulation, and communication uplinks." He tapped the table. Pulling up a holographic model. Small, modular domes nested inside subway platforms, softly lit from within. "We can retrofit 5 test sites by next week." A silence settled before Grant scoffed. "That's public infrastructure, not corporate profit." Landon's tone sharpened. Calm, but cutting. "We protect people first. Profit follows trust. That's not philanthropy. That's strategy." No one argued after that. Across town, Maya scrolled through her phone, reading an article titled "Underground Hero, Archer Site CEO Seen Assisting Subway Evacuation." A blurry image captured Landon in profile, shirt sleeves rolled, hand on a child's shoulder. The caption read, "Unnamed boy credited with leading first comm response during blackout." Micah leaned against her side, eyes wide. "Mom, that's me." "That's the train." Maya smiled faintly. "It is, but we're staying quiet about it, okay? Sometimes being brave doesn't need to be famous." He nodded solemnly, then tugged the brass token from his neck. "Can I still wear it?" "Always," she said softly. "Just keep it safe." That afternoon, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but then saw the text preview. From Landon, for transparency. Attached was a confidential folder, forensic summary, private, with timestamps, IPs, and sworn technical affidavits. She opened the first page. The evidence was meticulous. Headers from old servers, archived DNS routes, even a log entry confirming deletion authorization from Natalie Voss's workstation. At the bottom of the file was a note in Landon's voice. "I can't undo what she did, but I can make sure nothing like it happens again. The truth belongs to you now. L." Maya stared at the screen, blinking back a rush of emotion she hadn't planned for. It wasn't grand. It wasn't performative. It was honest. That evening, as she helped Micah finish homework under the flicker of returning power, she whispered almost to herself, "Maybe people really can change." Micah looked up. "You mean him?" She smiled faintly. "Maybe all of us." Across the city, in his quiet penthouse, Landon stood by the window overlooking the faint shimmer of the skyline. The city was slowly waking, lights coming back block by block. He placed his phone down beside the brass token's twin, the one he'd kept all these years, resting in a small glass case on his desk. Its engraving matched exactly. Some promises, he realized, had waited long enough. 3 days later, the storm had cleared, leaving New York glazed with reflected light. Subways roared back to life, news outlets ran recovery headlines, and Archersight's logo appeared across monitors in every station. But not every room in the city was bright. Maya sat in a small cafe near Columbus Circle, nursing a mug of tea gone cold. She had agreed to meet Landon at his request. Just to talk, he'd written. Micah was at school, his teacher proudly showing the class a news photo of the brave boy from the blackout. He didn't know the photo had already traveled further than either of his parents wanted. The door chimed, and Landon stepped in. Tall, composed, dressed in an understated navy coat. Even out of his suit, he carried that effortless precision, though there was a new gentleness in his eyes when he saw her. "Hi," he said. "Hi," Maya replied. He sat across from her. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, taxis hissed through the slush. "I didn't mean for any of this to become public," he began. "I made one internal memo about the warm pod pilot, and someone leaked the footage from the tunnel. I'm handling it." Maya stirred her tea. "You're handling everything as usual?" Landon nodded slightly, accepting the jab. The board wasn't happy about the pro bono deployment, but they saw the data, how the beacon stabilized oxygen and temperature, how no one in that car needed hospitalization. They've agreed to fund a citywide trial. Maya's expression softened despite herself. "That's good. It's a start," he said. They sat in a quiet rhythm, the hum of the city filtering through the window. Finally, Landon reached into his coat pocket and set a small envelope on the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Chain of custody," he said simply. "For the investigation. Signed statements, notarized chain logs, and custody forms. It's everything the court would need if you ever wanted to file a case against Natalie." "I'm not suing anyone," Maya said, pushing it back toward him. "I just wanted the truth." "You have it," Landon said, "and now it's documented." She looked up, meeting his eyes. "What are you really doing here, Landon?" He hesitated, then answered with disarming honesty. "I don't know. I keep thinking about that night at the gala, how we said goodbye like it was temporary. And then I think about how it wasn't. I missed everything. His first steps, his first words, his first everything. And there's no version of time that makes that okay." Her throat tightened. "Micah has a life. I've worked hard to make it steady. He doesn't need it turned upside down again." Landon nodded. "I'm not asking to be his father overnight. I'm asking to be someone he can trust. That takes time." Maya's hand trembled slightly as she set down her mug. "And if he asks who you are?" "Tell him the truth," Landon said quietly. "Tell him I made mistakes. Tell him I'm learning how to fix them." She studied him. The way sincerity softened the lines around his eyes. "You really mean that?" "I do." A waitress passed, refilling cups, and for a moment they simply listened to the rain. Maya finally said, "He's starting to ask questions. About the token. About why I kept it." Landon's gaze warmed. "Then let's answer them together, slowly." She looked uncertain but not dismissive. "You'd wait?" "As long as it takes," he said. Outside, the sky broke open briefly, sunlight spilling across the wet street, reflecting off glass towers and fractured gold. The light caught on Maya's necklace, glinting like a small, familiar promise. For the first time in years, she didn't look away from it. 2 weeks later, the city's heartbeat had returned to full strength. Trains ran on schedule, billboards buzzed again, and the blackout had become yesterday's story, except for those who lived it. Maya stood outside the renovated station near 72nd Street, where volunteers had installed the first official warm pod. The small, glass-walled structure glowed softly from within. Solar microgrid lights diffused through frosted panels, air vents humming quietly. On its door was a plaque. Prototype 001. Archer Site, Mobility X NYC Transit. Micah tugged her sleeve. "Mom, is that it? The place Mr. Hayes talked about?" "That's it," she said, smiling faintly. "It's meant to help if the power ever goes out again." Micah pressed his nose to the glass, fascinated by the quiet technology inside. Folding benches, water canisters, filtered vents. "It looks like a spaceship." Before Maya could respond, a familiar voice approached from behind. "Good eye," Landon said. "You're not far off. The airflow system's modeled after the ISS habitat loop." Micah spun around, grinning. "Hey, Mr. Hayes!" Landon crouched slightly to meet his eye level, that same blend of warmth and precision in his movements. "You remember the beacon code I showed you? This pod runs on it." Maya smiled despite herself. "So, it's official now?" He straightened, nodding. "City Council approved it yesterday. 25 more units across the boroughs by winter, each one networked into a decentralized safety grid. No single point of failure." "That's impressive," Maya said softly. "You really built it." He glanced at her, eyes reflecting both pride and something quieter. "We did," he corrected. "You, me, and one very calm 9-year-old. Micah looked between them, confused but delighted. "I helped?" "You started it," Landon said. "The way you stayed calm in that tunnel, people followed your lead. That inspired this." Micah flushed with pride, looking down at his sneakers. "I just did what Mom taught me." Landon smiled at Maya. "Then she's the real engineer." Maya felt the words land deeper than she expected. She brushed a stray strand of hair from her face and said, "I'm still just a nurse, Landon." He shook his head gently. "You kept people breathing that night. Titles don't define that." As they stepped inside the pod together, the automatic lights warmed to a soft gold. Landon gestured to the air vents. "Temperature holds steady at 72 degrees. Even during an outage, it can sustain 20 people for 8 hours. Micah ran a hand along the bench. "Can I bring my class here for a field trip?" Landon smiled. "I'll arrange it." Maya crossed her arms, still cautious but no longer distant. "You're really doing all this yourself?" "Not just me," he said. "Transit's co-funding it, and I've asked the board to open source the beacon specs. It's public safety. Shouldn't belong to one company." Maya looked surprised. "That's not something CEOs usually say." Landon gave a small, almost rueful smile. "Maybe CEOs should start." A few moments passed in silence as they looked around. Then Landon reached into his coat pocket and handed Maya a folded document. "It's the final audit report, chain of custody sealed, signed by a federal notary. Everything about Natalie, archived and protected." She unfolded it slowly, fingers trembling slightly. "You didn't have to go this far." "I did," he said. "I wanted no question left unanswered." She nodded, eyes glistening as she refolded the paper. "You kept your word." He hesitated, then said quietly, "I'm hoping to keep another." Maya glanced at him, a question unspoken in her gaze. Just then, Micah called from across the pod. "Mom, Mr. Hayes, look, the power test says stable. That means it's working." They both turned toward him. For a heartbeat, the tension between them softened into something simple, two parents watching the same child light up the room. Outside, snow began to fall again, catching in the air vents' soft glow. The snow thickened by evening, dusting the subway entrance and blurring the glow of the new warm pod. Maya held her scarf tighter as she and Micah walked toward the plaza, where volunteers were still packing up equipment. Landon stood at the edge of the crowd, speaking quietly with a city liaison, his breath visible in the cold. He saw them and excused himself, crossing over. "You both made it," he said, voice warm despite the air. Micah lifted a thermos. "We brought cocoa." Landon laughed softly. "Now that's good engineering." He took a paper cup and offered one to Maya, who hesitated but accepted. Their fingers brushed briefly, just enough to send a flicker through her chest. They sat together on a bench under the canopy, the city humming faintly beneath the snow. "How's he doing?" Landon asked. "Better," Maya said. "He's sleeping through the night again. The nightmares stopped." "I'm glad." Micah was already kneeling near the bench, sketching the warm pod in his notebook. Landon leaned forward, watching him. "He's sharp. I saw how he traced the airflow pattern earlier. He noticed the vent offset most adults miss." Maya smiled faintly. "He gets that curiosity from you." Her words surprised even her. She'd avoided drawing connections before, between mannerisms, tone, even the quiet way both of them thought before speaking. But now, in the lamplight, the resemblance was undeniable. Landon lowered his gaze, voice quiet. "I had a lot of time to think about what I missed, what kind of man I could have been if I'd known sooner." "Don't do that," Maya said gently. "You didn't know." "I should have tried harder to know," he replied. "That's on me." They sat in silence for a while, the hum of traffic above faint and steady. Then Micah broke the quiet. "Mom, can we play chess? Mr. Hayes taught me about forks." Maya blinked, surprised. "You play chess now?" "Every day at the station library corner," Micah said proudly. "He brings a folding board." Landon smiled sheepishly. "It started as a lesson about strategic balance. Now he beats me half the time." "Half?" Micah grinned. "3/4. Maya laughed softly. The sound cracked something in the cold air, small but warm. She hadn't realized how long it had been since she'd laughed like that. Landon set up the small travel board from his briefcase. They played 3 rounds, Micah taking the first 2 with ease. Between moves, Landon explained how the beacons triangulated airflow during the blackout, using pieces to show direction. Micah countered with a knight fork, giggling when he cornered the queen. "You set me up," Landon said, smiling. "You walked right into it," the boy teased. Maya watched them, her hands cupped around the cocoa, the warmth seeping into her palms. For the first time, the tension she'd carried for years eased. When Micah went to get more napkins, Landon leaned back, lowering his voice. "He's incredible, Maya. You did everything right." She shook her head lightly. "I did what I could." "You did more than that," he said. "You gave him stability, empathy, and courage. I see you in everything he does." She looked at him then, really looked, at the tired lines near his eyes, the sincerity in his expression, the weight of regret balanced by quiet determination. "He's lucky to have you in his life now," she said softly. He met her gaze. "I'm the lucky one." Micah returned just as the clock struck 6. Snowflakes drifted down, catching in the lamplight. "Mom, can we stay a little longer?" Maya glanced at Landon. "You have work, don't you?" "I do," he admitted. "But this feels more important." They stayed until the lamps flickered on, bathing the plaza in gold. As they packed up, Micah slipped the brass token from around his neck and showed it to Landon. "You said you'd tell me what it means someday." Landon smiled faintly. "It means someone once made a promise to find their way back." Micah tilted his head. "Did they?" Landon's eyes met Maya's, soft and sure. "Maybe they're still trying," he said. Maya didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. The next morning dawned gray and windless, the kind of stillness that made the city seem to hold its breath. Maya woke early, standing by her kitchen window as steam curled from her coffee. Down the block, a city van carried the Archersite logo, Workers unloading compact silver cases marked Beacon Maintenance Unit. Her phone buzzed. A message from Landon. Landon, we're running the final tests for the warm pod rollout today. I'd like you and Micah to visit the control center, if you're comfortable. It's not press, just people who made it possible. Maya hesitated, her fingers hovering. Then she typed back, Maya, we'll come. By noon, she and Micah stood in the Archer site lobby. Polished glass, minimalist design, soft light reflecting from steel and marble. It felt worlds apart from the subway tunnels where they'd met, yet Landon greeted them as if nothing about the place mattered more than their arrival. He wore a tailored navy suit this time, but no tie, his expression calm and genuine. You made it, he said warmly. Micah grinned, clutching his sketchbook. Mom said this is where you control the city. Landon chuckled. Not control. Help it breathe. He led them into a wide control room filled with monitors and engineers. The central display showed a glowing map of New York's transit lines. Blue nodes pulsed across the network, each one labeled Beacon Active. Those are the warm pods, Landon explained, every one of them sending air, heat, and data feedback in real time. Micah's eyes widened. It's like a heartbeat. Landon smiled. Exactly. Want to start one? The boy gasped. Can I? Press that green button. Micah hesitated, then tapped it. One of the blue nodes flashed brighter, and a cheer rose from the engineers nearby. Pod 47 online, someone announced. Battery grid stable. Micah turned to Landon, eyes glowing. I did that? You did, Landon said, smiling. Maya watched quietly, emotion tightening in her throat. The room buzzed with accomplishment, but what struck her most wasn't the technology. It was the way Landon looked at their son, equal parts awe and gentleness. Later, when the staff dispersed, Landon guided them into a private office, simple, spacious, the skyline visible beyond. On the desk sat a sealed envelope and a small DNA testing kit, stamped with official chain of custody seals. I know this feels sudden, he began, voice careful, but I wanted everything handled properly. No assumptions, no shortcuts. Maya understood before he said it. You ordered a test. With full consent protocols, Landon said quickly. 2 lab witnesses, documented transfer. It's only valid if you both agree. Maya looked down at the envelope. Years of uncertainty, fear, and quiet strength folded into that thin paper. I'm not trying to force anything, he said, but the truth deserves proof. Not for me, for him. Micah looked between them, sensing the tension. Is this about me? Maya knelt beside him, brushing his hair back gently. It's about giving you answers someday, sweetheart. The kind that don't fade. Micah nodded slowly. If it helps you both stop worrying, I don't mind. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the servers outside. Maya swallowed, then turned to Landon. We'll do it, but only if we all go together. He nodded, relief flickering across his face. Together. Hours later, the samples were sealed and signed, the courier departing under strict witness. There was no dramatic tension, no shouting, just quiet finality. When the courier left, Maya turned to him. What happens now? We wait, Landon said softly, and no matter what the paper says, you have my respect. Always. Maya exhaled. You're really not the man I remember. I hope not, he replied. That man lost everything that mattered. She looked away, emotion catching in her chest. Outside, snow flurried again over the skyline, reflected in the glass behind them, tiny white pieces falling between the city and the truth they were finally ready to face. The results arrived 3 days later. A courier in a gray parka handed the sealed envelope directly to Maya's hand at the hospital where she worked. She didn't open it there. She slipped it into her coat pocket, finished her shift, and took the long train ride home in silence, her reflection blurring against the tunnel glass. That night, she called Landon. Come by, was all she said. He arrived within the hour, snow still clinging to the shoulders of his overcoat. Micah was already asleep, his chessboard folded neatly on the kitchen table. Maya gestured toward the envelope on the counter. "It came this afternoon." Landon nodded, removing his gloves. "Do you want me to open it?" She shook her head. "We open it together." The apartment was quiet except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. Maya tore the seal carefully, unfolding the letter. Her eyes scanned the lines once, twice, then she exhaled, sharp and soft at once. Landon waited, breath held. "It's a match," she said. For a moment the air seemed to thin. Landon closed his eyes, every muscle in his body loosening at once. He hadn't realized how much tension he'd carried until it finally released. When he opened them again, his voice was almost a whisper. "Thank you for trusting me." "This isn't about trust," she said gently. "It's about truth." He nodded. "Then truth it is." She handed him the paper. His own name, Landon Hayes, appeared beside Micah's in the header, linked by the quiet certainty of science. For a long moment neither spoke. Finally, Maya asked, "What now?" Landon folded the letter and set it aside carefully. "Now I ask what Micah needs first." Maya blinked. "Not what you want." He smiled faintly. "What I want doesn't matter if it doesn't serve him." She studied him, a faint tremor of respect softening her guarded tone. "He needs new shoes," she said finally. "He's outgrowing everything." Landon laughed quietly, the sound breaking something heavy in the room. "I think I can help with that." "And an inhaler refill," she added, smiling despite herself. "And maybe a Saturday that doesn't involve homework or chores." He leaned against the counter. "I was thinking the Transit Museum. He'd love the old control panels." Her smile widened just slightly. "That used to be our weekend ritual." "Then we keep it," he said. When she looked at him again, she saw not the corporate executive from television, but the man she'd once met by accident at a charity gala, curious, grounded, trying his best to make sense of the world. Later, when the apartment had gone quiet again, she walked him to the door. "The results are our business," she said firmly. "No media, no statement. He's a child, not a headline." Landon's expression was steady. "Agreed. I've already told my team there will be no leaks, not a word." "Good," she said. "Then maybe we can start from here." He paused in the doorway, the winter air brushing against both of them. "I'd like that," he said softly. As he stepped into the hall, Maya glanced toward the chessboard on the table, Micah's white king still standing, the black queen cornered in check. It wasn't victory, just balance. In that moment, she realized something had shifted. Not a clean ending, not yet, but the beginning of a steady peace. Downstairs, as Landon walked toward his car, snowflakes drifted through the streetlight, catching briefly in his dark hair. He touched the letter inside his coat pocket, not as proof of ownership, but of belonging. He didn't need a press release or an announcement. The truth was enough. By the following week, the blackout had faded from headlines, replaced by city politics and weather updates. Yet, in quiet corners of New York, the warm pods still hummed, a quiet symbol of how crisis had reshaped both the city and 3 lives bound by chance. At Archersite headquarters, the board assembled for a high-stakes vote. Landon stood at the head of the table, calm but resolute. His hair caught the soft light from the ceiling panels, the tailored navy suit fitting like armor. Grant, the CFO, leaned forward, tone clipped. "We're here to finalize the warm pod rollout. But before we vote, I need clarity. Are we co-funding these with Transit for public use, or selling them through private contracts?" "Co-funding," Landon replied. "Equal split between Archersite and the city's emergency management budget. Full transparency. Open data access." Grant's expression hardened. "That's a mistake. We're giving away proprietary tech." Landon met his gaze evenly. "We're sharing life-saving tech. There's a difference." A few murmurs circled the room. The operations director spoke next. "Investors will push back." "They can call me," Landon said. "I'll remind them that trust and leadership are the only currencies that survive crisis." He turned toward the display screen behind him, where photos of the warm pods glowed softly. Commuters warming their hands, kids laughing inside safe light. These pods stabilized air quality for hundreds of people. That's not charity. That's proof of concept. Every functioning beacon is a living demonstration of our capability. He paused, voice lowering. We build things to keep people alive, do. If profit costs us our humanity, it isn't profit, it's loss. Silence followed, heavy and deliberate. Then a hand rose from the far end of the table, a senior member, older, pragmatic. I vote yes. One by one, others followed. The final count passed, 8-6. The motion carried. Landon exhaled quietly. The warm pods would expand citywide. After the meeting, his phone buzzed. It was Maya. Maya. Heard the news. You did it. Landon. We did it. Maya. Micah's teacher says they're writing essays about people who make the city better. Guess who he picked? Landon smiled faintly at the screen. Landon. His mom, I hope. There was a pause, then, Maya. Maybe both of us. That evening, he met them at the platform near Central Park West. Transit crews were finalizing another warm pod installation. Micah ran up, clutching a clipboard almost bigger than his chest. Mr. Hayes, they let me test the vents again. Landon crouched beside him. And how's it working? Perfect, Micah said proudly. Mom says I might be an engineer someday. Landon's eyes softened. I believe her. He rose as Maya approached, her hair tucked beneath a wool hat, cheeks flushed from the cold. She nodded toward the technicians finishing the signage. I saw the press release draft. You took your name off it. It wasn't my story, he said. It belonged to the people who endured that night. That's rare, she said quietly. Most people in your position would have made it about themselves. Landon glanced at her, eyes steady. I've done enough of that in my life. She smiled. Small, real. Well, it looks good on you. The humility thing. He laughed softly, the sound low and warm. Don't tell my board. From across the platform, a journalist tried to approach with a camera, but Landon raised a hand politely. No interviews today. Instead, he turned back toward Maya and Micah, lowering his voice. Let's keep this between us, all right? The pod rollout, the family part of it, everything. Maya nodded. That's what I want, too. The journalist drifted away, disappointed. Landon looked down at Micah, who had tucked the brass token into his coat pocket. The boy grinned. Mr. Hayes, can I help name the next one? Landon crouched again. You already did. The first prototype was Beacon M1. The M stands for Micah. Micah's face lit up, eyes wide with pride. Really? Really? Maya blinked back sudden tears. For once, she didn't hide them. Landon straightened, meeting her gaze with quiet certainty. No more secrets, no more missed chances. Snow began to drift again outside the glass doors, catching in the artificial lights above the station. It looked almost like ash turned to peace. The city, for once, was breathing evenly. The platform was nearly empty at dusk, the day's last train echoing off tiled walls. The new warm pod glowed softly in the corner, a quiet heart beating beneath the city. Maya stood with Micah inside the glass enclosure, helping him zip his jacket. Landon approached, his coat collar turned up against the cold, his steps steady and unhurried. Hey, he said softly. The heat levels are perfect. The sensors are reading steady at 72. Micah grinned. That's my lucky number. Landon smiled, crouching so he was eye level with the boy. Good thing, because it's going to keep thousands of people warm this winter. Micah pulled the brass token from his pocket, the one he'd carried since the blackout. It gleamed under the pod's soft light. Mr. Hayes? Yeah, buddy? The boy hesitated, then pressed the token into Landon's palm. Can you keep this safe for me? Landon froze, fingers curling gently around the small circle of brass. The weight of it felt heavier than metal. Years of lost time, found truth, and the quiet forgiveness of a child. He looked up at Maya, his voice low. "Are you sure?" Micah nodded solemnly. "Mom says some things belong to both people, like the truth." Maya's eyes glistened. "He gets that from you." Landon turned the token over. The engraving faint but still legible. "Find your way back to me. E." He swallowed hard, the words catching somewhere between memory and renewal. "I'll keep it safe," he said softly, "and I'll keep you safe." Micah smiled. "You promise?" Landon met his gaze. "With everything I have." The boy's head tilted, thoughtful. "Then it's okay if I just call you Dad sometimes?" The sound of that word landed quietly, like the world exhaling. Maya's breath caught, her hand covering her mouth. Landon's composure wavered just enough for his voice to tremble. "I'd like that," he said. The lights flickered once, then steadied, bathing the pod in soft gold. Micah ran toward the window, pointing. "Look, it's snowing again." Outside, flakes fell slowly, catching the lamplight as if the whole city had turned to watch. Maya stepped closer to Landon. "He's never called anyone that before." "I know," he said quietly. "It's not a title. It's trust." They stood together in the warm light, the hum of the beacon soft beneath them. The pod's gentle air current brushed their faces, steady, rhythmic, alive. After a long moment, Maya spoke. "You did what you said you would. You repaired with truth." Landon turned to her, the brass token still resting in his hand. "It wasn't just me. You kept hope alive when everything else went dark." Maya smiled faintly, looking down at the token between them. "Then maybe that's what this really was about, finding our way back." He nodded, slipping the token into his pocket with careful reverence, "and keeping the light on this time." A nearby intercom crackled to life, announcing the final train of the night. Micah waved at them from the window. "Come on, you two, we'll miss it." They laughed softly, falling into step behind him. As the train pulled in and its doors opened with a hiss, Landon glanced back once. Through the glass, the warm pod glowed like a promise fulfilled. Steady, golden, alive. And, for the first time in years, New York didn't just look like the city that never slept. It looked like a city that finally knew its way back.